Ecto steps up to the glowing crystal inside the Grand Church of Glende, expected to inherit his family's famous three-attribute magic. As the third son of Margrave Land Glenlead, everyone assumes he will wield fire, water, or wind, just like his father and older brothers, Beld and Oct. But when the light fades, the priest delivers shocking news. Ecto has awakened earth magic, the single most hated and useless skill in the entire kingdom. In a land that values long-range firepower for noble mages, earth magic is mocked as weak and wasteful. Land glares at his son in absolute fury, declaring Ecto a disgrace before storming out. Ecto is immediately put under house arrest, back at the Glenlead estate. His brothers mock him at the dinner table, telling him he smells like dirt and banning him from eating in their presence, while the servants giggle behind his back. But what his family doesn't realize is that Ecto holds a massive secret. When he was 10 years old, a high fever unlocked memories of his past life as a human in 21st century Japan. He knows modern science, structural engineering, and elemental chemistry. Pair those concepts with his huge noble mana reserves, and earth magic isn't a dud at all. It's an incredible cheat code waiting to be unleashed. 6 months later, Land summons Ecto to his office and strips him of his noble surname, exiling him to govern Boda Village, a miserable, monster-infested settlement on the kingdom's western border. Ecto happily accepts, steals his family's secret savings of heavy gold coins on his way out, and leaves Glendy behind. To guard his carriage, his father hires the B-rank all-female party known as Wings of Advance. Led by the red-haired broadsword fighter Amanda, the group includes half-gnome earth mage Aurum, half-elf archer Sepher, hooded fire mage Doreen, and half-giant shield wielder Nora. Amanda initially looks down on Ecto for being a weak noble, but that attitude doesn't last long. Along the bumpy road, the group encounters over 20 mounted bandits surrounding a broken merchant carriage. Before the party can charge, Ecto uses his earth magic to raise an enormous net of soil, trapping the horses and flipping the raiders to the ground. He binds their limbs with hardened earth while the party cleans up the rest. Impressed by his fast thinking, Amanda instantly respects him. Inside the carriage, they find a merchant named Albedo and his educated maid, Linne. With their axle snapped, Ecto invites them to ride along. Upon reaching the next town, Albedo hands over the bandit bounty split and, as a token of gratitude, cancels Linne's 100 gold coin slave contract, leaving her free. Grateful to Ecto for saving her, Linne chooses to stay by his side as his personal maid. Half a month later, the group reaches Boda Village, only to find it under siege by 24 D-rank orcs battering the weak wooden fence. Ecto offers the party 1 gold coin per monster, jumps into action alongside them with stone spears and swordplay, and wipes out the horde. After splitting the orc magic stones, Ecto meets the elderly village chief, Anji, who presents Ecto as the new lord. Boda Village is full of rundown shacks, so Ecto gets right to work. In just 15 minutes, he uses earth magic to compress soil into rock-hard pillars and walls, building a giant 3-story mansion complete with a basement. Astonished by the sight, Amanda and her party decide to settle in Boda permanently, so Ecto builds them a matching house next door. The next morning, Aurum helps furnish the interior, while Ecto crafts a kitchen and uses earth magic to drill a 100-meter deep hole down to an underground water source for running water. Searching deeper, he hits a thermal spring 500 meters down, creating a custom outdoor hot spring bath in his yard. While Ecto enjoys a soak, Aurum jumps in, following gnome mixed bathing customs, and Linne joins to scrub his back, sending a flustered Ecto running back inside wrapped in a towel. Refreshed, Ecto turns his attention to the village. He sets up a daily raffle with Chief Anji and begins replacing every dilapidated shack with modern 2-bedroom homes, finishing 10 houses a day in exchange for fresh produce. To protect the village from future monster attacks, Ecto spends 3 hours raising a 5-meter-tall, 2-meter-thick stone wall around the entire perimeter, complete with a surrounding moat. When he realizes he needs strong gates, Anji introduces him to Birkin, a 15-year-old local blacksmith struggling to refine iron ore alone. Combining earth magic with his Japanese knowledge of atomic elements, Ecto at once strips all impurities from piles of raw ore, turning them into pure iron ingots in seconds. Stunned by the miracle, Birkin builds reinforced iron-bound gates for the village and repairs the worn-out gear of the Wings of Advance, with Ecto footing the bill as a village investment. 2 weeks later, Ecto takes the Wings of Advance into the nearby forest to inspect a clean stream flowing past the village. Wanting to modernize Boda even further, he leads the party underground to dig a 2-meter-wide tunnel, linking every home's drainage and toilet to a flowing underground sewer system. During the dirty work, a sudden leak of foul air leaves the party gagging, but Ecto finishes the job, connecting the stream to wash all waste miles downstream. Covered in mud and smell, the girls happily accept Ecto's offer to wash off in his outdoor hot spring bath. When all 5 adventuring women and Linny join him in the water, Ecto agrees to build a grand public bathhouse for the entire village before making another quick escape. Ecto steps out into the village with the 5 women of Wings of Advance, leaving Linny to watch the house, and heads to an open lot between the residential area and his estate. Since party leader Amanda loves baths, Ecto decides to build Boda's public bathhouse right here. Using his earth magic, he constructs separate bath areas for men and women, complete with changing rooms, wooden shelves crafted by Aurum, and a direct hookup to the new underground sewer system. The moment the building is finished, Amanda leads her party inside for a second bath, while amazed villagers gather outside and quickly form a towering line to try Boda's first proper hot water facility. The next morning, Linne wakes Ecto up with news that village chief Anji needs to speak with him. After meeting Wings of Advance on their way to hunt for fresh meat, Ecto arrives at Anji's home, where the elderly chief drops to his knees with a desperate request. Although Ecto already waived the village taxes for the year to help them survive, the soil in their farmlands is completely exhausted, leaving crops dying every season for over 120 farmers. Heading straight to the fields with Linne and Anji, Ecto places his palms on the dirt and uses soil survey, confirming the ground is completely dead. Gathering rich dirt from the wild forest outside the back gate, Ecto mixes it into the fields and activates soil improvement magic, in seconds turning the barren ground into lush, dark soil. Relieved by the miracle, Anji brings up another major problem. Boda has 45 local hunters who struggle to survive against anything stronger than weak beasts. Knowing his own limits, Ecto consults Wings of Advance, and Linny suggests offering all magic stones harvested by trained hunters straight to the party as payment. Archer Sepher smiles and immediately volunteers to train them in archery, swords, and spears. What Ecto does not realize until Amanda drags him back into his outdoor hot spring is that gentle-looking Sepher is actually known as the party's terrifying shadow boss. The very next morning, Sepher commands the nervous hunters to call her mum and launches a brutal 3-month boot camp, chasing anyone who slows down with sharp wind blades and forcing them through 10 laps around the perimeter wall, followed by 1,000 sword swings a day. By the time summer arrives, the hardened hunters have formed Boda's official hunter unit, and Merchant Albedo arrives with a convoy of supply wagons. Stunned by the stone mansions, defensive wall, and mountain of monster materials stored in Ecto's basement, Albedo begs to establish a permanent shop in the village. Ecto agrees, asking for only 10% of sales in exchange for building the storefront, and walks Albedo to a prime spot on the main road. Kneeling down, Ecto uses his earth magic to raise a giant 4-story building, 2 floors above ground and 2 below, in just 30 minutes. With Albedo staring in absolute disbelief, Ecto hands internal woodworking duties to Aurum, while Albedo leaves behind a sweet cat beastkin employee named Kai to manage the store. As autumn sets in, Hunter Captain Edo rushes to Ecto's mansion with urgent news. Over 100 desperate refugees are sprinting toward Boda, pursued by a hulking horde of 100 goblins. Ecto immediately orders the hunter unit to cover the perimeter wall and has Wings of Advance open the front gate, ushering the exhausted crowd inside before sealing the entrance. With the hunters raining arrows down from the 7-meter wall, Ecto and the party charge into the open field, using Earth Wall to split the enemy line. Scout Aurum dashes forward and spots the true threat driving the unusually aggressive horde: 3 goblin generals, 2 goblin mages, and a heavily armored goblin king. Working in perfect sync, Amanda and shield-bearer Nora slay the generals, green-haired Sepher and fire mage Doreen incinerate the mages, and Ecto traps the giant goblin king using Earthnet so he and Aurum can slash through its armor gaps and decapitate it. With their leader dead, the remaining goblins flee, and Ecto turns to address the refugees. A young man named Rudin steps forward, revealing he is the acting chief of neighboring Book village, which was completely destroyed by the horde. Ecto welcomes all 100 survivors into Boda on the spot, leading Aurum to an empty lot near the farm fields, where they construct 3 2-story apartment buildings with 12 spacious units each, while Anji serves hot meals to the traumatized newcomers. Realizing Boda is growing rapidly, Ecto spends the following weeks expanding the village boundary 500 meters into the surrounding forest, raising the outer stone wall to 7 meters high and 4 meters thick. The Book hunters join the defense force under Captain Edo and Vice Captain Rudin, expanding the hunter unit to 70 trained men. During a joint forest drill, where Ecto helps the hunters defeat 2 vast ogres, the rest of Wings of Advance return bloodied and bruised from deeper in the woods. Amanda reveals her team just wiped out an entire expanding orc village that had driven the goblins out in the first place, prompting Ecto to throw a colossal village-wide feast to celebrate with roasted orc meat. Looking for ways to boost Boda's his economy and spiritual health, Ecto meets with a refugee priest named Vagini, who asks for a place of worship. Ecto uses his magic to erect a beautiful stone church on the main street, allowing local villagers to finally receive their oracle ceremonies. Taking his maid Linne inside, Vagini places a glowing crystal in her hands, revealing that Linne possesses the extremely rare light magic skill. Realizing Linne can now cast high-tier healing magic and gather valuable potion herbs, Ecto promises to take her gathering in the forest, while Vagini opens the church doors to offer ceremonies for every human, beastkin, and subhuman in Boda. As winter approaches, Ecto joins Wings of Advance on a major expedition to the uncharted Abulkel mountain range, a 4,000-meter peak bordering the militaristic Mildenberg Empire, in search of valuable mineral veins. Deep inside the dense, warm border forest, Scout Oram suddenly dashes back pale-faced, warning the group that the grassy hill they are standing on is actually the shell of an immense, sleeping green dragon. The ancient dragon rouses and speaks directly into their minds, mockingly challenging the weak humans to survive the dangerous forest before settling back down to sleep. Shaken but uninjured, Ecto and the party press forward, reaching the frozen base of the mountain range after 7 hard days of travel. Using soil survey on a cliff wall, Ecto discovers a rich vein of pure mithril running deep inside an elevated cave. Climbing up, the party ventures down an artificially carved stone passage that leads straight into a hidden underground settlement inhabited by high dwarves. A muscular miner named Donovan greets them with a booming laugh, casually revealing that his subterranean race uses precious mithril and adamantine as basic iron for simple pickaxes and kitchenware. Donovan leads them to Chieftain Gargan, who agrees to discuss mineral trade over a grand feast if the humans can prove their good intentions. Recognizing that the underground dwarves desperately crave strong surface alcohol, Ecto realizes he has the perfect bargaining chip. But before trade talks can even begin, a terrified dwarf miner comes sprinting into the chamber, shouting in panic. Deep inside the cave system, a panicked miner reports that B-rank killer spiders have trapped 5 dwarf children high up in thick webs on the ceiling. Donovan charges toward the nesting area with his axe, and Ecto's group follows right behind him. Standard iron weapons bounce off the sticky silk, but Sepher slices through the strands with sharp wind magic, while Doreen burns away the rest with fire magic. A dwarf hands Ecto a heavy mithril axe, allowing him to easily cut through the remaining webs and slice the giant monsters in half. The children safely rescued, Donovan claps Ecto on the back and officially declares the human adventurers true allies of the High Dwarves. That night in the cavern hall, Chieftain Gargan throws a sprawling feast filled with roasted meat and heavy drinking. Gargan agrees to trade precious mithril ore for strong surface alcohol, but he insists Ecto must beat him in a drinking contest to prove his worth. Ecto accepts the challenge and downs glass after glass until he nearly passes out, finally securing the chieftain's respect through sheer willpower. The next morning in the tunnels, gigantic explosions shake the entire cavern. Ecto rushes over to find the dwarves blasting through solid rock using primitive explosive charges, a secret technique passed down from an ancient visitor from another world. During the excavation, Donovan unearths a rare chunk of adamantite ore. Ecto uses his earth magic to, in a flash, purify the metal, prompting an impressed Donovan to forge Ecto a custom adamantite sword with a mithril sheath. Seeing the rest of the party looking envious, Donovan gladly spends the afternoon forging full sets of custom mithril weapons and armor for all 5 members of Wings of Advance. Later that day, a hungover Gargan officially seals the trade deal, filling the group's backpacks with raw mithril ore in exchange for alcohol. Curious about human life, Donovan asks to leave the cave and move to Boda village as a resident blacksmith. Gargan gives his blessing, and Donovan quickly packs his gear to join the trip home. On the trek back through the forest, 3 tiger panthers ambush the party, but Amanda and Sepher easily destroy them with their new mithril weapons. Passing near the sleeping green dragon, Donovan insists on paying respect to the creature he calls the forest god. Donovan presents half of his mithril ore as an offering, which the giant dragon swallows whole with a satisfied nod before sinking back into the earth. Upon reaching Boda village, Ecto welcomes Donovan to his mansion while Wings of Advance return home. Maid Linny greets them warmly at the door. After a long trip, Ecto and Donovan unwind in the outdoor hot spring bath, where Donovan gazes up at the open blue sky in total awe. Later that evening, after a relaxing bath of their own, Wings of Advance head back to their quarters. Ecto collapses onto his bed, waking up moments later to find Linny leaning close, softly asking about his journey as he happily recounts the adventure. The following morning at the workshop, Ecto guides Donovan into the forge and introduces him to 15-year-old local blacksmith Birkin. The two smiths hit it off immediately, and Donovan decides to move in right away to train the young boy. Over at Kay's shop, Ecto unloads stacks of mithril ore onto the counter. The cat beastkin shopkeeper nearly loses her mind with excitement, buying all the ore her cash allows and agreeing to order monumental crates of strong alcohol for the dwarves. To boost the village defense, Aurum gifts killer spider silk to Donovan, who uses it to craft a reinforced mithril bow for Sefer. As winter sets in and snow covers the region, Merchant Albedo arrives in Boda village. In a private room, Ecto explains the dwarf trade and signs an exclusive contract drafted by Linny to swap alcohol and potions for mithril. Over the next 2 months, Ecto secretly uses his earth magic to dig a titanic, 50-kilometer underground tunnel connecting Boda village directly to the Abulkel mountain range. He equips the passage with air vents every 500 meters, glowing moss for lighting, exit steps near the dragon, and 3 underground rest stops. Ecto, Wings of Advance, and Donovan test the finished tunnel, delivering fresh alcohol to Gargan and returning with 2 months' worth of harvested mithril in less than a single day. Meanwhile, in the royal capital of Ferris, Prime Minister Alphonse Granville notices an unusual flood of mithril entering the market, all traced back to the Albedo Company. Suspecting Boda village is hiding a huge discovery, his clever and impulsive granddaughter, Liliane Granville, insists on investigating the border settlement in secret. Back in Boda, Ecto receives a confidential letter from neighboring Viscount Advance requesting a secret visit with his daughter. 1 month later, a black carriage approaches the village gates. Hunter Captain Ito and his guards shoot down a pack of attacking dire wolves before welcoming Viscount Advance and his daughter Liliane into the settlement. Liliane immediately eyes Boda's towering stone walls and elite mithril-equipped hunter unit with heavy suspicion. Out in the forest, Liliane boasts about graduating top of her class at the Magic Academy with ice magic, demanding to hunt monsters. Ecto, Linny, and Wings of Advance escort her outside the walls. After frozen solid ogres make Liliane overly confident, she ignores warnings and runs deep into the woods, straight into the grip of a giant 10-meter A-rank cyclops. As the monster grabs her, Ecto leaps high into the air and slashes off the beast's wrist with his adamantite sword, dropping Liliane safely into Linne's healing hands. Wings of Advance swarm the monster, slicing its feet, blinding it with fire magic, and cutting its tendons until Ecto leaps back onto its shoulders and slashes its throat. Back inside the safety of Boda, a shaken Liliane bursts into tears and drops to her knees. She confesses that she is actually Liliane Granville, granddaughter of Kingdom Prime Minister Alphonse Granville, sent to secretly investigate the village's mithril supply. Ecto agrees to tell her the whole truth at his mansion, but only on the condition that the Prime Minister promises to remain a reliable ally. Ecto sits down for an open-air bath with Viscount Advance, who reveals he married Prime Minister Alphonse Granville's 6th daughter, making him Liliane's uncle by marriage. Advance admits he already suspected Boda's rapid growth through Merchant Albedo's trade shipments, praising Ecto's enormous stone walls and disciplined hunter unit. After Ecto explains his contract with the High Dwarves in the Abulkel mountain range, Advance offers to serve as his patron alongside the Prime Minister, backing Ecto to receive an official noble rank from the king in exchange for a direct supply of mithril ore. The next day at lunch, Hunter Captain Edo bursts into the mansion with terrible news, reporting a towering fire dragon flying toward Boda village, carrying the dead Cyclops corpse. Knowing the village's mithril arrows might not pierce dragon scales, Ecto orders Edo to keep the hunter unit on the outer walls for defense, while he leads Wings of Advance, Linne, and Liliane into the forest to intercept the beast. Deep in the woods, Ecto uses earth magic to jump into the sky and attempt telepathic dialogue, but the arrogant dragon scoffs at humans and vows to incinerate the whole settlement. Ecto launches himself on an earth pillar and slashes the dragon's wing joint with his adamantite sword, but the monster retaliates with a blast of roaring fire breath that melts his earth defenses. The dragon's rainbow-gleaming scales completely nullify magic attacks from Doreen, Liliane, and Sefer, leaving the grounded fighters unable to damage the flying monster. Just as the dragon prepares to wipe out the entire group with a giant fire breath, the ancient green dragon extends his long neck from a distant hill, biting clean through the fire dragon's remaining wing and sending it crashing onto the dirt below. With the fire dragon grounded, Ecto collapses the earth beneath it, steps up, and thrusts his adamantite sword directly into its throat. Nora pins its claw with her hulking shield, while Amanda severs its second wing, allowing Aurum and Sefer to strike its head, while Doreen detonates its open throat wound with explosive magic. Though the thrashing dragon knocks Nora back with its tail, Ecto leaps onto its face and drives his adamantite blade straight through its skull, killing the beast and becoming a legendary dragon slayer. After Ecto buries the Cyclops' body, to prevent attracting more monsters and promises extra offerings to the green dragon, Lilian explains that kingdom law requires all dragon materials to be offered to the royal family first. Overjoyed by the historic kill, Viscount Advance immediately rushes off in a black carriage to Capital Ferris to inform the king, leaving Lilian behind to help prepare the dragon scales, meat, and mithril samples. That evening, Ecto treats the entire village to a vast dragon meat feast before setting out on the one-month journey to Capital Ferris, alongside Linne, Lilian, and all 5 members of Wings of Advance. Overcoming bandits and monster attacks along the way, the party arrives at the giant fortress city of Ferris, protected by 4 layers of 10-meter-high white walls housing over 3 million citizens. Lilian uses her Granville family crest dagger at the noble gate and drawbridge, guiding Ecto directly into the royal castle for a private meeting with Prime Minister Alphonse Granville. Inside his office, Alphonse questions Ecto about hiding the mithril, but Ecto explains his desire to protect the High Dwarves and keep the discovery safe from his abusive father, Margrave Glenlead, winning the Prime Minister's full respect and official sponsorship. Lilian takes Ecto, Linne, and Wings of Advance to a high-end shop in the city, spending 10 large gold coins to dress everyone in fine clothing before leading them into the grand throne room of King Erland. Before the assembled court, King Erland officially grants Ecto the noble title of Baron, with permanent ownership over the border forest, upgrades Wings of Advance from B rank to S rank adventurers, and grants former slave Linne full kingdom citizenship. When Margrave Glenlead is called into the hall, King Erland strips his authority over the border forest and officially hands control to Baron Ecto, leaving land to bow in silent defeat. Before leaving the capital, Ecto visits Guildmaster Marcos at Adventurer Guild headquarters to request a new guild branch in Boda Village to attract monster hunters to the frontier. With permission granted, Linne and Lilian post flyers offering full living support and settlement opportunities, convincing vibrant receptionist Arlie and 30 energetic adventurers to join their return trip. After a month and a half of travel, the group arrives back at Boda Village, where Ecto uses his earth magic to construct a 5-story apartment building in just 30 minutes to house the new recruits. With Boda expanding rapidly, Ecto decides to consolidate 5 nearby border settlements, named Goz, Hers, Gain, Rama, and Kud, into one giant unified territory. Outside the main entrance, Ecto clears 1 kilometer of forest on 3 sides and builds a colossal 10-meter-high, 3-meter-wide second outer wall, creating a double-wall defense system before laying down underground water and sewer pipelines to support the incoming population. With the infrastructure complete, Ecto brings the village chiefs of Goz, Kurs, Gain, Rama, and Kud together to propose moving their entire populations into Boda. Anji and Linne guide the chiefs through their designated residential sectors, complete with sturdy homes and prepared farmland. Blown away by the safety and comfort, all 5 chiefs eagerly agree to relocate. Within a month, thousands move in, transforming Boda into Fortress City Boda. The incoming hunters boost the city defense force past 400, which Ecto splits into the Boda Guards led by Ido and the Forest Hunter unit led by Rudin, building a 5-story garrison building to house them both. Soon after, Albedo arrives with an immense merchant wagon train carrying fresh job applicants recruited from the royal capital. Inside the newly built Internal Affairs building, Ecto interviews the candidates alongside Linne and Lilian. He hires dozens of skilled cooks to open food stalls, appoints former royal administrative official Emal as head of Internal Affairs, and brings on a sharp strategist named Entree as chief diplomat. Entree right away impresses Ecto by spotting Boda's biggest hidden political risks, including potential friction between districts, the profit-driven motives of Viscount Advance, and retaliatory threats from both Margrave Glenlead and the Mildenberg Empire across the mountains. The final applicant turns out to be Ortbein, a world-famous court magician and sage who snuck away from the royal palace out of pure boredom. The next morning, Emal officially takes charge of internal affairs during a meeting with the district heads. The former chief of Gain reveals a shocking secret. His former village was originally founded to guard a sleeping dungeon entrance, and the other 4 villages were watching dormant entrances to the very same multi-entrance dungeon network. Realizing the danger, Ecto immediately posts an investigation quest at the Adventurer Guild through Arlie, paying 3 gold coins per scout to check each entrance. Seeking real answers, Ecto takes Ortbein through the secret underground tunnel straight to the Green Dragon Sanctuary. Ortbein warmly greets the ancient dragon as his old master, revealing that he was an orphan raised right here in Boda Forest. The Green Dragon explains that skills are not rigid limitations. Anyone who masters mana control can learn all 6 magic elements, though this secret is kept hidden from humanity to prevent wars against other races. More importantly, the Green Dragon warns that dungeons are living entities. When a dungeon falls quiet, it is not dead, it is silently storing power to unleash a catastrophic monster stampede. Knowing a sprawling horde could wake at any moment, Ecto and Ortbean travel through the tunnels to the High Dwarf chieftain Gargan. Ecto sketches the design for a heavy artillery cannon on the cave floor, and Gargan agrees to forge 100 mithril cannons and mass-produce dynamite explosives. Recognizing the threat to his own people, Gargan pledges to bring the High Dwarves to Boda to join the city defense. To inspect the threat firsthand, Ecto joins Amanda and the Wings of Advance party to delve into the Gauze dungeon entrance. They breeze past low-rank monsters on the cave and forest floors, but past the 15th level, the dungeon turns deadly. Silver-scaled dragon subspecies immune to magic block the stone corridors, followed by swarms of flying wyverns over lava rivers on the 16th level. On the 17th level, scorching heat drains their stamina as twin fire dragons attack. Ecto takes a brutal blow from a dragon tail, downs a potion, and manages to sever a fire dragon head alongside Amanda team, but Aurum returns with terrifying news that the staircases ahead are crawling with dozens more fire dragons. Realizing a full clear is impossible inside the dungeon, Ecto calls a retreat to save their strength for a siege. Back at the mansion, Ecto, Liliane, Ortbean, and Amanda finalize a total defense strategy. Over the next week, Ecto and Ortbean pool their gigantic mana reserves to clear 1 kilometer of forest and build a third outer wall, 15 meters tall and 5 meters thick. Between the outer walls, Ecto uses earth magic to dig deep moats and fills them with crude oil piped directly from underground oil fields. Gargan delivers all 100 mithril cannons, which Ortbean mounts on the second wall, training local farmers to crew the artillery. High Dwarf warriors deploy along the first wall with dynamite-tipped mithril arrows, while the Boda guards and Wings of Advance equip full mithril gear for close combat. 3 days after preparations finish, a warning smoke signal rises over the forest as the earth begins to quake. Monitored dungeon entrances collapse as thousands of roaring beasts burst into the open, from goblins and ogres to armored wyverns, fire dragons, and towering black dragons, charging straight toward Boda in a full-scale stampede. Monumental waves of monsters smash right into the third outer wall, but the petroleum moats and wall defenses hold the line. Up on the second wall, Ortbean commands the artillery, and all 100 mithril cannons fire at once. Cannonballs rip through wyvern wings, blow off fire dragon arms, and shatter black dragon scales, dropping winged beasts right out of the sky. Ortbean ignites the petroleum moats, turning the gap between the walls into a sea of fire that burns fallen monsters alive. Even when giant cyclopes break through sections of the outer barrier, cannons and fire pits crush their charge. Down on the battlefield, Ecto leads the Boda guards, hunter units, and adventurers. He orders everyone to aim straight for dragon throats to shut down breath attacks before they can fire. Using health potions supplied for free by Albedo, wounded fighters heal in an instant. Ecto charges a fire dragon, slicing its legs and severing its head with his adamantine sword. Linne casts area heal spells on injured soldiers, while Liliane freezes wounded dragons in place, so the Wings of Advance can finish them off. High Dwarf archers rain dynamite-tipped arrows from the inner wall, blasting the remaining beasts with loud explosions. During the chaos, Ecto pushes his earth magic beyond his limits. Doreen notices his internal mana overflowing dangerously, and Amanda slaps him across the face, forcing him to rest before his magic burns him out. The Wings of Advance step up, executing team combos to hold the line, while Ecto recovers. Ortbean sends telepathic word that lower-tier beasts are fleeing into the forest, while mid- and high-tier monsters burn in the oil trenches. Just as cyclopes break through the second wall and green retreat smoke signals the defenders to pull back into the city, a towering 20-meter black dragon descends from the sky. Before it can strike, the green dragon reaches out from the forest and bites off the monster's right arm and wing. The black dragon crashes between the walls. Ecto lunges forward, but its scales are harder than adamantine, and his sword barely cuts into its flesh. The beast spews venomous black miasma breath that melts Ecto's earth walls and badly poisons his body. Liliane throws up an ice shield, while Linne casts All Heal, a rare high-tier spell that purifies the poison and completely restores Ecto's strength. Refreshed, Ecto overclocks his magic again. He uses Earth Swamp to trap the black dragon's lower body, turns the mud to solid stone, launches himself into the air on an earth pillar, and drives his adamantine sword straight through the monster's unarmored forehead. The black dragon collapses dead, breaking the stampede and causing the surviving beasts to scatter back into the wild. With the city saved, Ecto spends a week resting while his mana stabilizes. He and Ortbean use earth magic to bury burnt monster remains deep underground, level damaged terrain, and repair the outer walls while leaving the cannons mounted for defense. High Dwarves build 100 covered supply wagons, and help carve up the titanic black dragon before returning to their mountain caves. Ortbein uses a magical teleportation circle to bring Ecto's report straight to King Erland in Ferris. The king requests Ecto's immediate presence at the royal castle to hand over the dragon materials. Ecto, Linne, Lilian, and the Wings of Advance set off for the capital with 100 Boda hunters escorting a huge 100-wagon convoy, fighting off multiple bandit attacks along the way. Prime Minister Alphonse Granville greets them warmly at the royal castle in Ferris. Inside the throne room, King Erland offers Ecto 100 bright gold coins for the materials. Knowing that sum would wreck the royal treasury, Ecto takes 50 bright gold coins instead, asking only for permission to use the leftover dragon materials in Boda. King Erland agrees, officially grants Ecto full ownership of the Abulkel mountain range, and elevates his title from Baron to Earl. Linne and the members of Wings of Advance are granted Viscount titles for their bravery, while Lilian asks the king for a single personal favor to be claimed later. Before leaving the capital, Ecto meets Prime Minister Alphonse Granville for dinner to request civil service administrators for Boda. Lilian and Lin recruit a master chef at a local sweet shop, while Ecto posts notices at the Adventurers Guild for school teachers, healing mages, and miners. A month later, the group returns to Fortress City Boda alongside fresh recruits. Back in Boda, new developments move at lightning speed. Ecto uses earth magic to build a new school with specialized tracks for reading, math, farming, hunting, and swordplay, opening classes to both children and adults. A new clinic opens under 20 newly recruited healing mages. Using his geological survey spell along the base of the Abulkel mountain range, Ecto discovers a rich iron ore vein, which he keeps enclosed inside a fortress village for miners led by Heigl, complete with public bathhouses and strict working hours. Soon after, Ortbein teleports Ecto and Lilian back to the royal capital for a formal ball hosted by King Erland to celebrate the iron discovery. Dressed in a tailored suit, pre-measured by Ortbein, Ecto takes the floor with Lilian. They dance 4 consecutive songs together, signaling their close bond to the entire royal court. During a break, Viscount Advance approaches Ecto to secure a direct iron trading deal between their territories. Returning home once more, the Wings of Advance report that the nearby dungeon has stabilized, though desert floors higher up are filled with sandworms and giant antlions. To celebrate, Ecto takes the group out to a local sweet shop where the party demolishes a giant parfait challenge. As settler applications flood in from across the kingdom, Ecto uses earth magic to build new 3-story houses and 5-story apartment blocks. Visiting the local school with Linne, he finds packed classrooms with students standing in the aisles, prompting him to plan immediate expansions for his growing empire. Ecto expands the reading and math classrooms in Boda, then merges the hunting and swordsmanship classes, so young students learn both bow and blade against wild monsters. Afterward, he takes Linne out for sweets to celebrate their hard work. Chief Heigl reports that 80 miners are hard at work using light mithril pickaxes up at the Abulkel mining village. Ecto uses earth magic to expand the village footprint and raise new housing blocks before joining Ortbein to climb higher up the cliffs. With geological survey magic, they locate a hidden vein and dig out 4 full backpacks of rare adamantite ore, worth a small fortune. On the way back, Ortbein calls out to his mentor, the enormous green dragon. They feed a backpack of raw adamantite directly to the dragon, who happily munches on his favorite rock snack. Ecto purifies the leftover adamantite magic and brings it straight to Master Smith Donovan and Birkin back in Boda. The dwarf smiths craft brand new adamantite weapons for all 5 members of the Wings of Advance. Just as the adventurers gear up, Guard Captain Edo rushes in with tense news. Viscount Advance has arrived at the outer wall with 100 trained cavalry troops and horses. Ecto crafts a giant temporary earth stable in seconds to host the mounts. It turns out, Advance wants to trade 100 warhorses for iron ore, but since Boda has no open plains for cavalry, Ecto declines the horses and instead accepts a signed promissory note witnessed by Lilian and Ortbein, gifting the Viscount 5 horses for the smooth deal. Not long after, Emil and Linne burst into the estate, pale as ghosts. The kingdom just passed a national tax law forcing all landed nobles to hand over 50% of their personal wealth and annual revenue to the crown. Realizing this absurd tax will ruin every territory, Ecto, Lilian, and Ortbein use a magic circle to teleport straight to Prime Minister Granville in Ferris. Granville reveals that First Prince Andre and the Noble Council Chairman Duke Mark Peps pushed the law under the excuse of building central funds against the neighboring Mildenberg Empire. Ecto marches straight into the council chamber to demand the law be cancelled, but Duke Mark Peps smugly warns him that rebellious nobles usually fall ill and die. Refusing to back down, Ecto faces the full assembly the next morning. In response to his defiance, Duke Markmeps strips Ecto of Fortress City Boda, handing the city back to Ecto's father, Margrave Land Glenlead, while leaving Ecto with nothing but the wild forest and the mountains. Prime Minister Granville explains that Duke Markmeps is actually his own jealous brother, who targeted Ecto simply because Ecto is allied with Granville's faction supporting Second Prince Nicholas. But Ecto is not broken. If he lost a city, he will simply build a better one. Back at the estate, Ecto holds an emergency meeting with local leaders, including Village Chief Anji, Guard Captain Edo, and Hunter Captain Rudon. To his relief, almost all the guards, hunters, and residents choose to follow him rather than stay under the Margrave's rule. Moving deeper into the forest near the mountains, Ecto goes to work with his earth magic. Within days, he constructs a whole new settlement named Fortress City Abul, featuring double 15-meter-high outer walls, modern housing, hot springs, underground storage vaults, and heavy defensive cannons. He then dismantles Boda's outer defenses to prevent it from being used against him, leaving behind just enough infrastructure for the few locals and the Adventurer Guild who remained. Soon after, Margrave Land sends Ecto's arrogant older brothers, Beld and Oct, with 50 soldiers to govern what remains of Boda. Thinking governing is easy, the Fire Mage Beld and Wind Mage Oct immediately impose a heavy 30% crop tax and order their soldiers into the undeveloped forest to hunt monsters for meat. Without proper hunter support or mages, the soldiers are mercilessly ambushed by trolls and ogres. When a towering 10-meter Cyclops attacks, Beld and Oct are forced into a total retreat, leaving all 50 soldiers severely injured. With potion supplies exhausted and medical costs mounting at the guild, the two brothers watch their funds completely drain away. Meanwhile, up in Abul, Ecto decides to scout the 4,000-meter peak of the Abul Kel mountain range with the Wings of Advance. High above the clouds, they encounter the ancient rock dragon, who guards the peaks, much like the green dragon guards the forest. The rock dragon casually mentions that scout squads from the military-focused Mildenberg Empire recently crossed the summit to spy on Falsford Kingdom. Realizing an invasion could happen at any moment, Ecto spends 3 solid days shaping the mountain ridge with earth magic, constructing a towering 2-kilometer stone defense wall and fortified outpost modeled after an ancient wall. With the high mountain border secure, Ecto hikes down to the dwarf caves to report the new wall to High Dwarf Chieftain Gargan. Hearing that the neighboring empire might be planning a war, Gargan promises that the dwarf warriors will fight alongside Ecto if trouble starts, before immediately dragging Ecto and his party into a giant all-night drinking feast. Ecto returns to his mansion in Abul the very next morning, finding Ortbein and Lilian waiting with urgent news from the royal capital. Ortbein confirms that Duke Markmeps is the mastermind behind the 50% national tax, using First Prince Andre as a front to strip local nobles of their wealth. Wanting to uncover the truth, Ecto decides to investigate the royal court directly, and Lilian takes his hand to guide him through the grounds. Ortbein uses his magic to teleport them straight into the castle gardens in capital Ferris. Inside the garden, they run directly into Princess Juliana. Sensing something terrible is happening, the princess pulls Lilian aside and confesses a horrifying secret. She recently overheard a late-night conversation behind First Prince Andre's door between Andre and Duke Markmeps. The neighboring Mildenberg Empire plans an invasion, and Duke Markmeps convinced Andre to surrender the kingdom without a fight. In exchange, the empire promises to let Andre rule as a puppet king, while the 50% tax law was designed to bankrupt regional nobles so no local army can resist the imperial takeover. To top it off, Princess Juliana is set to be forcibly married off to an imperial noble. Realizing how dangerous this information is, Ecto and Ortbein within moments teleport the princess back to Ecto Mansion in Abul to discuss their next move in total safety. Meanwhile, over in stripped Boda, Land Glenlead sends 100 fresh soldiers and funds to help his older sons. Beld and Oct decide to prove themselves by hunting an oak village in the forest, taking 150 soldiers into the woods. What starts as a simple hunt turns into a total disaster when over 200 monster oaks swarm them, led by oak mages, 3 giant oak generals in armor, and a towering 5-meter-tall oak king clad in full plate mail. Beld panics, fires off explosion magic, and orders a desperate retreat, dragging his wounded men back to Boda while incurring hulking financial debt just to buy healing potions from the guild. Ecto and Ortbein consult with Prime Minister Alphonse Granville in his private office, back at the royal capital. The Prime Minister admits that King Erland intends to abolish the illegal tax law, but without physical evidence of treason, they cannot legally arrest Duke Markmeps or First Prince Andre. That night, Ecto takes matters into his own hands. Sneaking up to Duke Marx's mansion in the Noble District, Ortbein casts a unique concealment spell to mask all noise and sight in the area. Ecto uses earth magic to tunnel deep beneath the estate, entering a secret underground room hidden behind a sliding bookshelf. Down in the estate's hidden basement, Ecto uses earth magic to break open a concealed safe, recovering 3 leather pouches filled with light gold coins and 5 wax-sealed letters. Back at their inn, Ortbein carefully opens the seals, revealing unmistakable proof of treason. One letter is a signed pact between Prince Andre and Duke Mark-Ebs, granting the Duke half the kingdom's supreme power once the crown falls. The other 4 letters contain Mark-Ebs' signed agreement with the Mildenberg Empire, swearing total loyalty, agreeing to weaken the kingdom's military beforehand, and offering Princess Juliana as a political bride. The following morning, Ecto presents the letters to Prime Minister Alphonse Granville and King Erland. To prevent the traitors from claiming a political frame job, Granville instructs Ecto to crash the nobles' council session and confront them publicly. Ecto storms the council hall, stepping right up to the central platform where Duke Markups and First Prince Andre sit presiding over the assembly. When Markups sneers and insists the heavy tax is necessary for imperial defense, Ecto calls out their complete lack of any military strategy. Within the pact assembly, Ecto pulls the stolen documents from his bag and exposes the private asset audits of every noble in the room, leaving the assembly stunned. He then slams the 5 treason letters onto the table, reading their contents aloud. When Duke Markups and Prince Andre turn pale and scream that the documents are completely forged, Princess Juliana steps into the chamber to testify that she heard their exact scheme with her own ears. Panic explodes between the traitors as Andre at once tries to blame Markups for everything. Before they can recover, King Erland enters the hall with royal guards and orders both First Prince Andre and Duke Markups arrested on the spot. A few days later, in the Prime Minister's office, Alphonse Granville updates Ecto on the aftermath. Duke Markups is executed for high treason. His estate is demoted to a minor baron house under his innocent son, and First Prince Andre is stripped of his royal status and locked away in prison for life. To root out all corruption, King Erland officially dissolves the Nobles' Council entirely. To reward Ecto for saving the kingdom, King Erland elevates him to the rank of Margrave and bestows an official new house name, titling him Ecto Hellstrom. When King Erland asks what additional rewards he desires, Ecto requests 200 elite soldiers to defend his mountain border, along with a top-tier monster tamer to tame wild beasts in the undeveloped forest. King Erland gladly agrees, assigning 200 royal knights under Captain Georg to form the new Abul Knights, while introducing Ruda, a famous werewolf tamer with purple fur. When Liliane steps up to whisper her own secret reward request into the king's ear, King Erland bursts into warm laughter, while Ortbein chuckles quietly, leaving Ecto completely bewildered by what she asked for. Down in stripped Boda, Oct ignores his brother's warnings and takes 10 elite soldiers into the forest, only to get hunted by 3 vast trolls. Beld rushes out with 50 guards to save them, but their steel weapons can barely pierce the monsters' tough hides. Just as they are about to be wiped out, village head Dice and 20 local farmers charge into the battle-wielding farming scythes and hoes. To Beld's total disbelief, the farmers easily slice the giant trolls to pieces. When Dice reveals that Ecto had upgraded all farm equipment in Boda using high-grade mithril, Beld burns with intense jealousy, swearing to track down whoever supplied Ecto with such precious metal. Ecto meets Captain Georg and his 200 elite knights outside the capital by the castle gates 3 days later. He gives Georg detailed instructions on how to march the knights to Abul, using the secret underground passage near Boda. With their new werewolf tamer Ruda in tow, Ecto and Ortbein cast teleportation magic, returning to Fortress City Abul to prepare their defenses for the coming Imperial War. Ecto steps back into his mansion in Abul alongside Ortbein and Ruda, where Linne and Liliane are waiting for news. Ruda immediately picks up the smell of countless beasts in the surrounding forest, so Ecto lays out his target, taming 100 dire wolves for perimeter defense and fast mounts for his troops before the Mildenberg Empire attacks. Since finding wolves in the colossal forest is tricky, Ruda suggests hunting at night when the beasts are active, with the S-rank adventurers of Wings of Advance providing guard duty and Ortbein using stealth magic. The group heads into the dark woods. Deep in the forest, Oram and Ruda spot dire wolf tracks, and before long, 10 immense wolves surround the party. Wings of Advance draws their attention, while Ecto and Ortbein use earth magic to lock their feet in place. Ruda steps forward with secret werewolf herb balls, beating the calm beasts and binding them with magical taming collars. By dawn, they tame 60 dire wolves, but a giant cyclops without warning crashes through the trees. Ruda orders the pack to attack, and the agile wolves swarm the giant, taking it down in seconds. Pleased with the result, they finish taming 100 wolves and post them as guards along Abul's outer walls. The next afternoon, the team searches for mounts, but with no land birds in sight, Ecto decides to target bicorns, fierce black horse beasts with dangerous twin horns that excel at climbing steep rocky mountains. Ortbean summons a sudden lightning storm to paralyze a pack of 30 bicorns, allowing Ecto to bind their legs and Ruda to tame them. Ecto mounts one, amazed at how smooth and stable it feels even on rough terrain. By sunset, they tame nearly 200 bicorns and test their new cavalry by charging an orc village, effortlessly wiping out the entire camp, including 2 orc generals and an orc king. Captain Georg and his 200 elite knights finally arrive through the secret underground tunnel, and Ecto leads them straight up the steep slopes of the Abulkel mountain range. The knights stare in shock at tamed monsters roaming freely, but Ecto reassures them and guides them up to the sprawling Great Wall built along the summit. He equips every single knight with full sets of high-grade mithril armor and weapons, leaving them speechless at such luxury. Ecto orders Georg to begin high-altitude conditioning, preparing the knights to fight at the mountain peak where the air is thin. Over the next 6 months, Abul prospers as spider silk clothing becomes a famous local export, while high dwarf blacksmiths build mithril cannons in exchange for fine liquor. Seeking a quick break, Ecto travels deep into the uncharted forest with wings of advance, Linne, Liliane, Ortbean, and Ruda. After defeating a giant A-rank forest worm and a pack of magic-resistant dragon subspecies, they climb an active volcanic peak and stumble upon a nest of 20 gigantic fire dragons. The dragon chief, Nebel, threatens to eat them, but Ecto calmly explains that humans and beasts can coexist, winning Nebel over. The dragons celebrate with a wild drinking party, forming a firm alliance with Abul. Upon returning to Abul, Guard Captain Edo brings troubling news. Diplomat Entree went missing 2 days ago, fleeing toward the Mildenberg Empire with confidential defense plans. Knowing an invasion is imminent, Ecto jumps into action, ordering Ruda to boost their tamed forces to 400 direwolves, digging a monumental 5-meter-deep trench along the Great Wall and placing hidden rock golems along the slopes. Meanwhile, Boda's new lord, Beld, learns of the Empire's mobilization and digs trenches around Boda, hoping the forest beasts will weaken the enemy. At the same time, Ecto digs a titanic secret tunnel stretching straight behind the enemy border lines. 10,000 Imperial soldiers reach the border, and the invasion of Falsford Kingdom begins. Imperial Wyvern riders swarm the sky, launching hit-and-run fire attacks on the Great Wall. Ecto uses earth magic to create huge floating rock arms, grabbing a wyvern's tail and pulling himself into the sky. He slays the rider, cuts off the beast's wings, and uses earth magic to construct temporary glider wings on his back to maneuver through the air. After grounding several wyverns, he glides back to safety as mithril cannons and archers unleash a hail of firepower, while dire wolves and rock golems obliterate any infantry attempting to climb the rocky slopes. With the enemy main army pinned down, Ecto leads a strike force of S-rank adventurers, guards, and hunters through the hidden underground tunnel, emerging 500 meters directly behind the Imperial main camp. Riding fast bicorns, they hit the unprepared enemy camp like a thunderbolt, slaughtering confused soldiers and tearing through 3,000 troops to reach the command tent. Inside, Liliane in seconds turns the traitor Antra into a solid block of ice, while Ecto subdues the enemy commander, General Marbus, locking his arms in heavy earth shackles and pressing an adamantite blade to his throat, demanding an immediate full surrender of the entire Imperial army. Ecto forces General Marbus to order his Imperial troops to lay down their weapons, ending the invasion front without further bloodshed. To keep the enemy aerial corps from ever flying against them again, Ecto disposes of all captured wyverns, then seals the rest of the captured Imperial army inside modified underground tunnels near Fortress City Abul, while Marbus is kept as a hostage. With the front line secure, Ortbean teleports Ecto and Marbus directly to royal capital Ferris. Prime Minister Alphonse Granville takes Marbes into custody for questioning, uncovering several undercover Imperial spies hidden across the kingdom. Since formal peace negotiations require traveling directly to the Mildenberg Empire, Ortbean recruits Ecto and the S-rank party Wings of Advance as his personal escort. Riding high-speed bicorns, the group completes the month-long journey to the Imperial capital in just 15 days. Inside the Imperial throne room, Emperor Geld Mildenberg refuses to pay reparations for his failed invasion, threatening to execute the envoys on the spot. Ortbein does not flinch, reminding the emperor that thousands of his captured soldiers will be executed if they do not return safely. He demands full control of the border region, the Iola Plain, along with 2 large gold coins for every captive returned. When Geld tries to write off his defeat as a fluke, Ortbein proudly introduces Ecto as the young commander who crushed his army, prompting Ecto to boldly tell the angry emperor to bring as many armies as he wants next time. King Erland rewards the victorious heroes with grand titles back in Falsford Kingdom. Ecto is promoted to Marquess Hellstrom, officially gaining control over the entire Iola Plain, the Abulkel mountain range, and the Uncharted Forest. Linne and the 5 members of Wings of Advance are granted baron titles, along with new noble family surnames, while the guard and hunter captains are knighted. To Ecto's complete surprise, King Erland also officially approves his engagement to Liliane Granville, and before he can process the sudden news, Liliane happily leaps into his arms. Meanwhile, back in Fortress City Boda, Ecto's father, Land Glenlead, receives word that the war is already over. Furious at missing a fight, Land takes 300 soldiers and his eldest son Beld into the Uncharted Forest to blow off steam. After carving through hordes of ogres and trolls with his mithril sword, Land gets knocked down while fighting a giant 10-meter cyclops. He hands his mithril blade to Beld, who leaps forward and slashes the monster's throat, proving his strength and securing a proud victory for House Glenlead. A month later, on the Iola Plain, Ecto begins developing his new territory. To secure the border, he uses his earth magic to raise 3 enormous concentric walls, founding Fortress City Iola. He surveys the surrounding 10 villages led by Chief Randa, discovering 2,000 villagers struggling to survive on barren, nutrient-poor soil. Ecto uses soil magic and rich organic soil carried from the surrounding forests to create fertile farmland inside the city, building 3-story earth apartments for anyone willing to move. When a sudden torrential rainstorm floods the surrounding countryside and destroys their old homes, all 2,000 villagers permanently migrate into Fortress City Iola. To expand the fertile land even further, Ecto begins borrowing rich soil from the edge of the mysterious fog-covered demon forest. Hearing a frantic cry from deep inside the trees, Ecto and Ortbein rush in and save a young demon girl named Phoebe from a giant snake monster. A second demon girl named Caddy arrives to protect her, but Phoebe quickly realizes Ecto has no ill intentions. 1 month later, after Phoebe becomes a regular visitor to Iola, Katie guides Ecto and Ortbein deep into a hidden cave system to meet their leader, Chief Dino. Within the hidden cave, Chief Dino explains that demons rely on the dense magic energy in the forest to survive and eat magic stones to live. Touched that Ecto has no desire to destroy the forest or harm his people, Dino happily forms an alliance, offering ancient magic support and granting Ecto full permission to hunt the forest's high-rank monsters. Ecto takes Liliane, Linne, Ortbein, and Wings of Advance on a towering hunting trip, gathering tons of rare monster meat and magic stones. Phoebe joins them and demonstrates her power, summoning a devastating bolt of lightning without spending a single drop of her own mana by drawing on the forest's atmosphere. Chancellor Torsten reports these stunning developments to Emperor Geld, back in the Mildenberg Empire. Instead of starving on barren land, Ecto has transformed the Iola Plain into a thriving agricultural stronghold protected by a triple-walled fortress, 400 knights, 100 heavy cannons, and packs of dire wolves and bicorns. Furious that a former wasteland is now a rich paradise right on his border, Emperor Geld orders General Marbus to assemble a giant army to invade the Iola Plain and take the new city for the Empire. Up on the outer wall of Fortress City Iola, Ecto and Ortbein look out across the plain, using vision magic to spot the movement of the Imperial army. Realizing the Empire is attacking far sooner than expected, Ecto jumps straight into action. He sends Amanda and the Wings of Advance to Fire Dragon Nebel's nest to recruit their aerial power in exchange for mountains of alcohol. At the same time, Ecto gathers every available fighter from Abul, including 200 guards, 200 hunters, 100 high dwarves, 400 knights, and 400 dire wolves. Over in the Demon Forest, Ecto meets with Chief Dino to ask for help, promising to make the forest official Falsford territory so the demons can live in peace. Dino agrees, settling on cannon fire from Iola as their signal to strike. The next day, Ortbein reports 30,000 Imperial soldiers marching toward their tiny force of 900 defenders. To slow them down, Ecto rides out and uses soil magic to carve a hulking moat 5 meters deep and 10 meters wide, hidden behind 10-meter pitfall traps across the plain. By noon, 30,000 Imperial troops charge forward, but their heavy war machines stumble straight into Ecto's hidden pitfalls. Taking the initiative, Ecto opens Iola's main gates and sends 400 dire wolves and 600 mounted cavalry, leaping over the moat into 5,000 enemy horsemen. Heavy cannons boom from the second wall, blasting enemy wyverns out of the sky and signaling Nebel and his fire dragons to dive in, ripping the remaining flying beasts to pieces with flames and claws. Out on the left flank, the demon reinforcements arrive in style. Communicating through telepathy, Phoebe and the demons transform into muscle-bound horned giants, summoning 100 vast tornadoes and fiery snakes that roast and scatter the Imperial rear. With 5,000 enemy cavalry wiped out, 25,000 Imperial infantry press forward. Realizing his small team is getting swarmed, Amanda shouts for Ecto to pull back, and they leap back over the moat to regroup. Down near the moat, Ecto watches as Nibble swoops in and unleashes 3 colossal fire blasts, completely burning away the enemy left wing. Spotting the enemy general hidden behind siege catapults, Ecto orders a total charge. Nibble burns the siege weapons to cinders, creating a clear path right to a 50-man elite guard led by General Marbus in full plate armor. Ecto accepts Marbus's challenge to a duel, parries a heavy lance thrust, and slices the Imperial general in half with his adamantine sword. Holding his bloodied sword high, Ecto announces Marbus's death, causing the leaderless Imperial army to break into full panic and flee the battlefield. Over in the Imperial Palace, Chancellor Torsten delivers the terrifying news to Emperor Geld, reporting 20,000 dead soldiers, destroyed siege engines, and the total destruction of their Wyvern Corps. Horrified that less than 1,000 defenders crushed his immense army with dragons and demons, Emperor Geld falls back into his throne in total shock. 3 days later, Ecto and Ortbein travel to royal capital Ferris to report to Prime Minister Granville and King Erland. Overjoyed by the victory, King Erland grants Ecto's request to claim the Demon Forest as part of his territory. Meanwhile, back in Fortress City Boda, Ecto's envious father Land Glenlead and brother Oct fly into a rage over Ecto's growing power. They take 3,000 soldiers to the southern border to prepare a reckless campaign against a neighboring kingdom, leaving eldest son Beld to manage Boda in peace. 17 days later, Ecto, Ortbein, and Prime Minister Granville arrive at the imperial capital for peace talks, while Liliane and Linne explore the city. Facing Chancellor Torsten in the castle, Granville makes it clear that the Empire faces total ruin if war continues. Ortbein steps in and lays down 3 strict demands: ceding the Demon Forest to Falsford, providing sprawling supplies of fine alcohol for the fire dragons, and forming an equal trade alliance between both nations. Left with no choice, Torsten accepts every single term, securing permanent peace for Fortress City Iola. Ecto stands on the high walls of Fortress City Iola and decides it is time to turn his frontier stronghold into a thriving, open city for humans, beastkin, and demons alike. Gathering his inner circle back at the estate, Ecto asks everyone what the city needs most. Liliane immediately demands a sweets shop and trendy fashion boutiques. Lynn requests a free school and medical clinic, and Amanda wants a top-tier blacksmith for her weapons, while Orem suggests setting up an adventurer guild branch. Taking their ideas, Ecto creates promotional flyers offering amazing perks like free schooling, free healthcare for settlers, and 0 monthly rent for shop owners. He dispatches the Wings of Advance Party alongside the Iola cavalry to scatter these flyers across nearby imperial towns. The response is gigantic as crowds of settlers flood into Iola, prompting Ecto to shape rows of 3-story apartment buildings directly out of stone using his earth magic. But with so many new arrivals, Linne and Liliane quickly get overwhelmed managing the growing ledgers. Needing professional administrative help fast, Ortbein teleports to the royal capital in Faris and returns with Nicholas Netzel, a sharp official appointed by Prime Minister Granville, along with 4 assistants. Just as they settle in, a gorgeous dark elf named Valia arrives as Iola New Adventurer Guild Master. She warns Ecto that the monsters in the Demon Forest are far too strong for low-rank adventurers, so Ecto uses his underground tunnel network to connect them to Fortress City Abul, opening a second guild branch near the mineral-rich Abulkel Range, where lower-rank monsters roam. With the paperwork side of the city covered, Ecto walks Nicholas and his team to a vacant lot in the city center and in a flash constructs a monumental civil affairs building using his earth magic, leaving the capital officials completely speechless. But as Ecto and Ortbein stroll through the back alleys afterward, they realize stealthy eyes are watching their every step. Ortbein casts concealment magic to mask their presence, while Ecto uses earth movement to spring onto a rooftop, pinning an Imperial spy to the ground. The panicked spy confesses that Emperor Geld Mildenberg sent them to keep tabs on Ecto's next move out of pure curiosity. Annoyed by the constant watching, Ecto has Ortbein teleport them straight into the Imperial Palace courtyard. Guards immediately surround them, but Ecto calmly demands an audience audience with Emperor Geld and Chancellor Torsten. Inside the throne room, Geld tosses one of Ecto flyers onto the floor, while Torsten complains that Ecto is stealing valuable Imperial citizens. Ecto apologizes for not giving advance notice, but Geld laughs off the complaint, declaring the Empire is far too big to care about a few migrating commoners. Fascinated by Ecto-free public perks, Geld even offers to marry off one of his 16 daughters to strengthen their ties. When Ortbein deflects the offer onto Ecto, Ecto politely turns down the Imperial princess, promises to give the Empire a heads up on future projects, and teleports back home. Meanwhile, back at the Glenlead estate in Glend, Margrave Land Glenlead and his second son Oct panic over rumors of refugees fleeing the neighboring Lindbergh kingdom. Convinced this is a sign of an impending invasion, Land prepares to launch a foolish preemptive war just to outshine Ecto's recent glory. Luckily, his eldest son Beld arrives, realizes Land's entire plan is based on a random hunch, and forces his father to travel to the royal capital in Ferris to consult Prime Minister Granville. Granville sits Land down and delivers a blistering 8-hour lecture that leaves the stubborn Margrave sobbing in his carriage all the way home. Back in Fortress City, Iola, Ecto, Ortbein, and the Wings of Advance Party take their stockpile of dragon scales to a newly arrived high dwarf blacksmith named Duncan. The mastersmith is stunned to see pure adamantite weapons and dragon scales, eagerly accepting the job to fuse the materials together. A week later, Duncan delivers the radiant, hyper-light Adama dragon weapons, whose razor-sharp edges cut through the air with terrifying speed. Deeply impressed, Ecto pays Duncan with extra dragon scales and hires him as his official personal blacksmith to forge magical staves for Linny and Liliane as well. Under Nicholas Netzel, brilliant leadership as chief civil servant, Iola rapidly transforms into a peaceful, highly organized hub complete with active schools, free medical clinics, and bustling markets. With the Wings of Advance Party away testing their new weapons in the Demon Forest and official peace talks stalling in the capital due to Imperial noble pushback, Ecto takes advantage of a quiet day to take Liliane out on a date. He buys her 5 elegant Imperial dresses, treats her to whipped cream pancakes at the city brand new sweets shop, and finishes the evening with a romantic dinner and wine. However, dark clouds are forming inside the Mildenberg Imperial Palace. Margrave Herbert, a powerful border noble furious over losing his territory in the previous war, demands that Emperor Geld allow the border lords to invade Iola. Torsten reminds him that the Empire already suffered 35,000 casualties and lost its entire Wyvern Rider Corps, but Herbert refuses to listen. Sensing an opportunity, Geld slyly tells Herbert that if he can prove a victory is guaranteed, he may attack, secretly hoping the rogue noble either reclaims land or gets eliminated by Ecto. Gathering 12,000 private troops with fellow nobles Viscount Morton and Earl Macaulay, Herbert realizes Iola 100 cannons and dragon allies make a frontal assault impossible, so he hires elite assassins to murder Ecto first. Night after night, shadow assassins slip into Ecto estate to slit his throat. During the very first attempt, Orem helps Ecto disarm 2 black-clad killers dropping from the ceiling, only for the assassins to bite hidden poison capsules before they can be questioned. Over the next 2 weeks, 12 separate assassination teams strike, forcing Ortbein and Ecto to realize the truth. Rogue Imperial nobles are trying to cut down Ecto as the central linchpin holding Iola together before launching a titanic surprise invasion. Knowing a full-scale clash is imminent, Ecto dispatches the Wings of Advance Party to rally reinforcements from Fortress City Abul and Chief Dino demons, preparing for the battle ahead. Outside Iola, 12,000 Imperial soldiers march across the dusty plain, set on wiping out the city before Ecto can summon help. But Ecto is already standing on the 3rd outer wall, completely prepared for their surprise attack. Riding his dark bicorn mount, he orders 400 direwolves through the main gate to tear through the front line. At the same time, half of his 400 knights man 100 cannons along the ramparts, raining explosive shells down on the approaching army. Outside the gates, Ecto leads the rest of his knights, Abul guards, and hunters into the fray on bicorn mounts, while local adventurers harass the flanks. Internal official Nicholas Netzel locks the heavy city gates behind them to keep the civilians safe. Abruptly, Chief Dino and 100 dark magic demons drop from the sky, casting colossal fire snakes and giant tornadoes that send enemy infantry flying into the air. In the center of the battlefield, Ecto leads an elite strike team through the chaos. Ortbein blasts enemy ranks with continuous lightning bolts, Liliane freezes charging soldiers into solid ice statues, and Doreen explodes enemy heads with fire magic. As Lynn keeps everyone healed, Ecto carves through the line until only 3 commander horses remain. Margrave Herbert, Viscount Morton, and Earl Macaulay draw their swords for a final stand, but S-rank adventurers Amanda, Nora, and Sepher charge in. Nora pierces Morton with a heavy spear, Sepher cuts down Macaulay, and Amanda slices Herbert completely in half, along with his weapon. In Capital Ferris, Ecto, Ortbein, and Lillian report the victory directly to Prime Minister Granville. Ortbein insists that the Mildenberg Empire must pay for constantly sending rogue nobles over the border, suggesting Falsford seize imperial border territory as compensation. King Erland gives Granville complete authority to handle the negotiations, so Ecto, Ortbein, and Granville take a bicorn carriage straight into the imperial capital to confront Chancellor Torsten. At the imperial palace, Chancellor Torsten tries to offer a basic peace treaty, but Ortbein rejects it and demands imperial borderlands instead. Trying to play clever, Emperor Geld secretly instructs Torsten to hand over a northern border zone that is actively contested by the neighboring Lutstrime kingdom, hoping to spark a fresh war between Falsford and Lutstrime. But the moment Torsten presents the offer, Ortbein exposes the scheme right away. Ortbein calmly declares that Falsford will simply sign a deal with the Lutstrime kingdom and hand the territory right over to them, turning an imperial trap into a major political loss for Mildenberg. In the imperial throne room, Prime Minister Granville demands an immediate audience with Emperor Geld. When Emperor Geld attempts to talk down to the delegation, an exhausted Ecto steps forward and delivers a brutal ultimatum. He bluntly warns Geld that if the Empire keeps playing mind games, he will personally bring Nebel and the Fire Dragons, alongside the Demon Forest army, to turn the entire imperial capital into a pile of ash. Shocked into reality, Emperor Geld backs down, apologizes for his tricks, and signs a strict, non-aggression pact. Geld agrees to pay a fortune in gold coins, and officially surrenders all imperial claims to Iola Plain and the Demon Forest. Back in Iola, Ecto unwinds in the hot springs, where Linny mentions an eccentric teacher at the local school who studies diplomacy and military tactics. Intrigued, Ecto visits the school dorms and finds Kraft, a brown-skinned teacher with wild afro hair, sitting in a room packed with books. Kraft points out that Falsford relies on slow messengers, recommending carrier monsters for fast communication, and suggesting matchlock firearms based on Ecto cannon designs. Realizing his potential, Ortbein pairs Kraft with Knight Captain Georg to manage Iola defense strategies. Ecto gathers Amanda and the Wings of Advance party to ride back to Fortress City Abul. At the Ecto mansion, they head straight to monster tamer Ruda to begin taming fast-flying beasts for a long-distance communication network. Ecto and monster tamer Ruda ride deep into the uncharted forest alongside the Wings of Advance party to hunt down beast hawks. These fast-gliding birds make perfect message carriers, so the group leaves their bicorn mounts behind and sneaks toward the nesting trees. Ruda climbs light on her feet into the canopy, placing her secret grass dumplings along the branches. As the birds eat the treats and fall into a peaceful state, Ruda swiftly casts contract magic on one female bird after another, causing golden collars to snap around their necks. Within minutes, an entire flock of beasthawks is tamed, and one cute bird swoops down to nuzzle Ecto on the shoulder. Meanwhile, back at the Glenlead estate in Glend, Land Glenlead is moping inside his locked bedroom after getting scolded by Prime Minister Granville in the royal capital. His eldest son, Beld, stands outside begging his father to come out and manage the territory, while second son, Oct, sits on the floor like an abandoned child. But Land's pity party comes to a sudden halt when a messenger soldier rushes into the hallway. The neighboring Lindbergh kingdom has mobilized its army, and 4,000 enemy troops are marching straight for the border. Hearing the word war in an instant cures Land's depression. He bursts out of his room with a giant grin, shouting for his sons to gear up. Taking 3,000 private soldiers, Land and his sons race to the border hills to join the 1,000 border guards waiting there. As the 4,000 Lindbergh troops cross into the neutral buffer zone, Land charges headfirst into the fray, swinging his spear and showing off his mithril plate armor, while Oct blasts enemy troops with wind blades. Beld rides across the field to keep order, ensuring wounded men drink healing potions, and within a few hours, the Lindbergh army is forced to retreat. However, the victory does not last. Over the next 3 weeks, Lindbergh troops launch fresh attacks every single week. Each time, Land and Oct eagerly charge out to drive them back, completely blind to the obvious trap. While the enemy replaces its losses with 4,000 fresh soldiers every time, the Glenlead forces are getting worn down to the bone. Beld tries to warn his father, but Land and Oct brush him off as a coward. Knowing disaster is coming, Beld secretly writes urgent letters requesting reinforcements from Prime Minister Granville, local border nobles, and even sends a letter to his banished younger brother Ecto, asking for forgiveness and begging for help. A week later, the storm finally hits. Lindbergh launches a full-scale invasion with over 10,000 soldiers. Facing overwhelming odds with only 2,800 tired men left, Beld begs his father to fall back to the city of Glendale, where 10,000 city guards are waiting. Instead, Land boasts that a crisis is just an opportunity and charges blindly into the 10,000 enemy troops with a tiny group of 500 soldiers. Realizing his father is beyond saving, Beld orders the remaining 2,300 men to fall back and defend Glendale. Back at the city gates of Glendale, Beld gathers 12,000 total troops and leads a desperate field battle outside the walls to thin the enemy's numbers. After cutting the enemy down to 5,000 at the cost of half his own forces, Beld pulls his men back inside and locks the huge city gates. Enemy soldiers swarm the outer walls with siege ladders, and Beld's men dump hot oil and shoot fire arrows down on them, setting ladders ablaze. But as more enemies pour onto the ramparts, the defenders are pushed to their absolute limits, and Beld prepares to fight to the death. Up above the battlefield, 10 giant shadows fall over the city as 10 enormous fire dragons swoop down from the clouds. 3 days earlier, back in Fortress City Iola, Ecto had received Beld's distress letter via a beasthawk messenger. Though hesitant to help the family that mistreated him, his maid Linne encouraged him to save his kin. Ecto immediately gathered the wings of advance and rode bicorns to the volcano in the uncharted forest. There, he offered Fire Dragon Chief Nibble a towering supply of alcohol in exchange for help, and Nibble happily agreed to lead 10 dragons on an express flight to Glendale. Arriving just in time, Ecto orders Nibble and the fire dragons to unleash hell on the besieging army. Swirling streams of fire incinerate the enemy soldiers, climbing the ladders and surrounding the walls, turning thousands into ash in seconds. The surviving invaders flee in absolute terror, leaving Glendale safe for the moment. Ecto lands Nibble right on top of the city wall, stepping off to greet his older brother Beld, who humbly asks Ecto for help in clearing out the remaining enemy forces. Over the next 3 days, Ecto uses his earth magic to reinforce Glendale's damaged walls, while local noble reinforcements bring their total forces to 8,000. Wanting to finish the job, Ecto takes Nibble and the Wings of Advance on a dragon recon flight over the border. High in the sky, he spots a giant army of 20,000 Lindbergh soldiers preparing a full-scale invasion in the buffer zone, with thousands more waiting at a main camp behind them. Seeing the threat, Ecto orders Nibble and the dragons to swoop down and carpet the entire encampment in wild fire breath, turning the 20,000 enemy troops into dust in a matter of minutes. Down in the burning camp, 2 completely naked men run out of a flaming tent, holding their heads in panic. It turns out Land and Oct had been captured during their suicidal charge and kept as prisoners. Ecto sighs at the embarrassing sight and has Nibble swoop down, grabbing both naked men by their feet in his hulking claws before flying back to Glendale. Nibble drops the 2 shivering naked men onto the stone floor, back on the city walls of Glendale. When Land and Oct realize who saved them, they within moments start yelling at Beld for bowing to Ecto, calling Ecto a useless earth mage who should know his place. But Beld finally snaps. He furiously glares at his father and brother, telling them to shut their mouths and reminding them that Ecto single-handedly saved their lives and saved the entire territory, while Land acted like a reckless fool. Beld declares that he will personally report Land's gross incompetence to Prime Minister Granville. 3 days later, 10,000 royal knights arrive from the capital, but with the enemy army completely wiped out, the war is already over. 2 weeks later, back at Ecto's mansion, court magician Ortbein teleports in and summons Ecto and the Wings of Advance to the royal palace in Ferris. Standing in the grand audience hall before King Erland, Prime Minister Granville, and his disgraced father, Ecto is officially rewarded for defeating the imperial invasion and wiping out the Lindbergh army. King Erland officially promotes Ecto from Marquis to Duke, ordering him to build a brand new mansion in the royal capital, while all 5 members of the Wings of Advance are promoted to Viscounts. In the royal audience hall, King Erland turns his anger toward Margrave Land Glenlead, scolding him for abandoning his command and getting captured by the enemy. Forcing Land into immediate retirement, the king names Beld as the new Margrave of Glenlead and transfers a portion of the vast territory to Ecto to ensure proper management. Oct is sent to the Royal Knights for retraining, leaving Beld to secure the northern border, while Land is ordered to live out his days in a capital villa. With the Glenlead family dismissed, King Erland turns to Ecto with a serious task, asking him to assist Prime Minister Granville and Sage Ortbein in investigating corrupt nobles across the kingdom. Back in Fortress City Iola, Ecto celebrates the party's new Viscount promotions before teleporting with Ortbein, Liliane, Linne, and the 5 Viscounts of the Wings of Advance to their new 3-story mansion in capital Ferris. He leaves Iola's defense in the capable hands of Georg, Nicholas, Kraft, and Valia, while Abul remains safely governed by Emar, Edo, Rudin, and Ruda. Inside his new capital office, Ortbein dumps stacks of tax reports on Ekto's desk, exposing how local nobles collect vast unauthorized taxes while reporting tiny sums to the crown. Two targets immediately stand out: Count Ubaldo Adalberto in the east, whose reported taxes fail to match heavy local spending, and a northern bloc of 4 lords with suspiciously huge military expenses. Before diving into field investigations, Lilian, Lean, and Amanda drag Ekto out to a popular capital sweet shop for crepes, taking a brief breath before their secret mission. The next afternoon, Ekto steps into the capital adventurer guild with Lilian and Linne to secure undercover identities. When the receptionist accidentally gasps Duke Ekto out loud, the entire guild hall erupts in cheers, surrounding him like a living legend from the stories of his victories at Abulkel and Iola. Lilian and Linne quickly steer the crowd toward the famous Viscounts of the Wings of Advance, allowing Ekto to complete his magic crystal test and receive a letter G rank adventurer card to use as a discrete identity. On the road to the eastern city of Ube, Ekto travels 3 days by carriage, alongside Ortbein, Lilian, Linne, and the Wings of Advance. Along the border farms, they find emaciated peasants kneeling in tears, revealing that Count Adalberto has seized their winter food reserves as extra tax. Horrified by the cruelty, Ekto hands them a heavy pouch of gold coins to divide among the village before continuing into the city. Undercover in Ubai, the team discovers a brutal 30% consumption tax levied on every single item in town, completely stalling trade and driving away adventurers. Recognizing an economic emergency, Ortbein teleports directly to the royal castle to inform Prime Minister Granville and King Erland. At the Grand Adalberto estate, Ekto and Ortbein arrive the following morning under royal authority, stepping past 50 young maids into a reception hall dripping in gold trim and fine art. Count Adalberto foolishly boasts about his 30% sales tax, oblivious to the fact that his greed is destroying the local economy. Dropping all pretenses, Ortbein announces King Erland's official decree, arresting the Count for tax fraud and crippling his own people. As Adalberto collapses in terror, Ortbein teleports him straight to the throne room for execution of sentence, stripping his title and placing the territory under direct crown management. Back in the royal capital 1 week later, King Erland hosts a grand birthday ball in the castle ballroom. Surrounded by admiring nobles, Ekto is approached by Count Luis Lagoste, Count Stenka Zashin, and Count Henry Olmeda, 3 northern lords who boast about their deep ties to Margrave Bertram Dyson and their colossal military prep against the northern border. Soon after, the formidable Margrave Bertram Dyson himself steps up, sternly warning Ekto that northern security is strictly his affair. Reviewing tax documents in his office the next morning, Ekto and Ortbein spot unusual national defense and private army taxes collected by all 4 northern lords, despite royal reports showing no border conflict with the neighboring Samsonov kingdom for 2 full years. Investigating the northern territories firsthand, Ekto and his companions visit the cities of Lagosto and Zashin, discovering each count maintains a private army of 5,000 heavily armed soldiers. Arriving in the city of Olga, under Count Olmeda, they find rowdy private troops lounging in local taverns. When 5 arrogant soldiers attempt to harass Liliane and Linne, Amanda and her fellow viscounts at once draw their blades, beat the group senseless, and throw them into the street. A grateful shopkeeper reveals that these immense private forces are being built under direct orders from Margrave Dyson, prompting Ekto to lead his team straight toward the military center of Dane. Just outside the sprawling private army encampment in Dane, Ekto scouts the area and counts nearly 20,000 trained soldiers stationed along the city outskirts. Casting a spell of stealth over the entire party, Ortbein slips them past the guards and into a giant military warehouse. Inside, row after row of gigantic siege towers, battering rams, catapults, and ballistas stand ready for war. Realizing that no border defense requires an arsenal capable of crushing a grand capital city, Ekto and Ortbein stare at the siege engines in horror, realizing Margrave Dyson is preparing an army not to fight a foreign enemy, but to march directly on royal capital Ferris. Ekto teleports straight back to royal capital Ferris with Sage Ortbein to report Margrave Bertram Dyson's treason to Prime Minister Alphonse Granville. The next morning, they teleport Granville directly into Margrave Dyson's fortress in Dane to confront the rebel lord. Sitting inside his heavily armored estate, Dyson arrogantly boasts that his 35,000 private troops and siege fleet are simple border defense, flatly refusing King Erland's order to disarm. But when Ekto reveals that he commands over 10 fire dragons, ready to incinerate the rebel force, Dyson turns pale as a sheet, realizing his secret backer lied to him. Before the traitor can move, Ortbein binds him in magical ropes and teleports him straight to the royal castle for interrogation. Under heavy questioning, Dyson confesses that the Mildenberg Empire secretly pushed him to start a civil war. King Erland strips Dyson and his 3 allied counts of all titles and lands, ordering strict tax audits across every domain in the realm. Knowing the Empire will not stop there, Prime Minister Granville officially cancels the peace alliance, and Ecto flies to the imperial capital on the back of the fire dragon Nibble, alongside 5 more dragons. Landing right in the imperial courtyard, Ecto and Ortbein march into the throne room and confront Emperor Geld Mildenberg. Ortbein cancels the treaty on the spot, and Ecto warns the trembling emperor that if Mildenberg ever touches Falsford again, fire dragons will burn the imperial capital to ash. Back at the estate in Fortress City Iola, King Erland sends 10,000 royal knights to secure the frontier. While relaxing in the outdoor bath with Liliane Granville, Ecto decides to consult Ortbein and his chief strategist Kraft on how to prepare for the inevitable imperial invasion. Kraft designs a lethal double-wall defensive zone along the border, featuring a narrow choke point that funnels enemy troops into a dead end. Working alongside high dwarf blacksmiths and local soldiers, Ecto uses his earth magic to construct 2 15-meter-tall stone walls, complete with hidden pit traps, matchlock rifle posts, and underground tunnels connecting directly back to Iola. Furious at his public humiliation, Emperor Geld Mildenberg mobilizes 100,000 imperial soldiers, 200 wyvern riders, and his entire magic unit, personally leading the monumental army to crush Iola. 4 days later, the imperial force reaches the border wall. From atop the outer wall, Ecto gives the command to strike. Nibble and the fire dragons sweep through the sky, incinerating siege towers and annihilating the wyvern fleet, while high dwarf dynamite and matchlock gunfire rain down on troops packed inside the narrow corridor. When enemy soldiers press onto the second wall, Ecto collapses the stone staircases with earth magic, trapping 30,000 imperial soldiers in a kill zone between the walls before dragon breath and demon magic wipe them out. Refusing to accept defeat, Emperor Geld charges out of his command tent alongside his final 1,000 soldiers. Ecto, Ortbein, and Amanda Marcelac mount bicorns and ride into battle with 300 Iola knights. Ecto confronts Emperor Geld in a fierce duel, and though Geld's legendary treasure sword holds off the initial strike, Ecto slices through his defenses, severing both of Geld's arms and decapitating him on the spot. With their emperor slain, the remaining imperial troops scatter in terror. After clearing the battlefield and repairing the stone walls, Ortbein and Ecto consult Prime Minister Granville at the royal castle. To secure lasting peace, Granville prepares to lead a diplomatic mission to the imperial capital to demand war indemnities while offering a formal truce. Returning to Iola, Ecto packs his gear for the tense journey, stepping into enemy territory as the man who killed their emperor. Ecto steps into the enemy imperial palace, alongside Prime Minister Alphonse Granville and Sage Ortbein Garland, ready to face the court of the fallen emperor. Inside the grand conference room, they meet Chancellor Torsten, Duke Calvino Landelico, and the newly crowned child emperor, Aaron Mildenberg, who glares with pure rage at the man who killed his father. Granville takes the lead, demanding border territory and gold indemnities to cover the damages of the invasion. Emperor Aaron slams the table and furiously refuses, declaring he will not pay a single gold coin after losing 100,000 soldiers. Seeing that pushing for money will fail, Ortbein smoothly turns the negotiation into a non-aggression pact. He warns the young emperor that neighboring nations are waiting to attack a weakened empire, and continuing a war with Falsford will bring total ruin. Realizing the danger, Aaron swears on his honor that Mildenberg will never invade Fortress City Iola again. Ecto promises in turn to keep his fire dragons from attacking the imperial capital unless provoked, establishing a binding truce that settles the war without another drop of blood. Back at the royal castle in Ferris, King Erland praises their success, rewarding Ecto with a titanic bounty of gold coins, since his noble rank as duke is already maxed out. King Erland also advises him to form diplomatic alliances with nations surrounding the empire to keep Mildenberg in check. Returning to Iola, Ecto celebrates with Linne Bernard, Liliane Granville, and the Wings of Advance party, believing he can finally enjoy a peaceful life. A full year of peace passes in Fortress City Iola, but tranquility brings a brand new nightmare: mountains of endless administrative paperwork. Chief Civil Servant Nicholas Netzel is away on a 6-month inspection tour across the territory, forcing Ecto, Ortbein, and Linne to work through the night just to keep up, while S-rank adventurer Sefer Bowl and the Wings of Advance party run brutal training sessions for the local night squad. Ortbein finds a way out. He discovers an official letter from Right Minister Douglas, of the Beastkin-led Osmond Kingdom, inviting Duke Ecto for diplomatic talks. Tempting Ecto with the chance to meet animal-eared Beastkin, Ortbein convinces him to run away from the paperwork. The two leave a quick goodbye note on the desk, slip past Liliane, and ride out of Iola on black bicorns. Traveling incognito across the mountainous Baltasar Kingdom to avoid imperial hostiles, they bribe gate guards with 3 gold coins to enter a frontier city. To travel safely, they sign up as guards for a 20-carriage merchant caravan run by a small bear beastkin merchant named Elmar, joining 20 mercenaries led by a boastful giant named Klaas of the Bloodied Sword Party. On the 4th day of travel, bandits trigger a huge rock slide at Casper Pass, crushing the lead wagon and trapping the caravan. As dozens of armed bandits charge down the slopes, Ecto steps up and casts a stone sword spell, sprouting jagged pillars of rock from the earth to impale the attackers and block their path. He follows up with heavy earth magic to crush the remaining ambushers, while Ortbein unleashes purple lightning to paralyze the rest. When a giant bandit chief rushes forward to challenge mercenary Captain Klaas, small merchant Elmar all at once launches into action. Using earth magic to shoot himself through the air, Elmar spins over the chief's back, extends razor-sharp beast claws, and severs the bandit chief's head in a single blur. With the threat wiped out, the caravan safely arrives at the Beastkin capital city of Omund. Down in the busy streets of Omund, human travelers are openly disdained by the locals, but Ecto and Ortbein meet Daniela, a tiger beastkin dual swordsman of the Tiger Moon tribe. After Daniela uses her twin sabers to chase off a group of rude beastkin adventurers, Ecto hires her as a local guide and bodyguard to prevent further trouble. Daniela guides them up the hill to the fortress-like royal castle, where a gorilla knight captain named EXILED ushers them straight into the guest room of Right Minister Douglas. Inside the guest room, Right Minister Douglas, a dachshund-faced noble, warmly welcomes Duke Ecto and asks for a binding alliance between their nations, claiming he fears a future invasion from Mildenberg. But Ecto and Ortbein see right through his game. Osmond is actually preparing to invade the sacred labyrinth forest to take its rich resources, creating heavy conflict with the resident elves, and Douglas wants an alliance with Ecto solely to prevent Mildenberg from striking his back during the war. Using secret magic, Ortbein writes a magic circle and teleports himself and Ecto directly to Prime Minister Granville's office in Ferris. Granville firmly rejects the alliance, warning that fighting the magical elves would strip the kingdom of spiritual protection and outrage the populace. Instead, Granville commands Ecto to gather intelligence and stop the war between the Beastkin and the elves before blood is shed. Returning to Osmund, Ecto and Ortbein realize they must recruit merchant Elmar and mercenary Klaas to uncover the truth behind the forest invasion. Ecto learns the real reason Osmond Kingdom wants Labyrinth Forest, inside Elmar's shop in Omund. The bear beastkin merchant explains that beastkin consume enormous amounts of monster meat, but hunting in wild forests is too unpredictable. To secure a stable food supply, Osmond plans to domesticate and breed giant monsters inside Labyrinth Forest, believing the ancient maze magic created by the elves can keep the beasts safely contained. Furthermore, the kingdom intends to enslave the elves to harvest their secret magical techniques. Elmar also reveals that 12-year-old King Laika recently inherited the throne, leaving real power split between the diplomatic Right Minister Douglas and the aggressive military leader Left Minister Beardark. Seeking combat intelligence, Ecto, Ortbein, and Tiger Beastkin Daniela travel 5 days to the border town of Frode. Inside the local mercenary guild, they find Klaas and his troop nursing minor wounds after returning from the forest. Klaas explains that dense disorientation magic covers Labyrinth Forest, causing intense nausea, while elven archers rain arrows down from the treetops. To overcome this, Osmund is assembling regular army units, alongside mercenaries, and deploying engineers to carve towering roads through the ancient trees, planning to systematically clear the forest. Determined to make contact, Ecto, Ortbein, and Daniela head directly to the edge of Labyrinth Forest. Just 10 meters into the thick canopy, powerful mind-distorting magic drops Ecto to his knees until Ortbein casts a protective magic barrier. Elven archers immediately unleash a volley of fire arrows, refusing to negotiate and driving the group back. Realizing they need a trusted mediator, Ortbein uses a high-level magic circle to teleport Ecto and himself back to the night training grounds in Iola. Half-gnome mage Oram spots them in seconds and clings to Ecto, agreeing to fetch half-elf archer Sepher in secret. When party leader Amanda spots the commotion and charges over demanding answers, Oram scoops up Sepher and dives into Ortbein's glowing magic circle, pulling everyone back to Frode just in time. After enduring a 2-hour scold from Sepher, Ecto learns that Prime Minister Granville already sent a Beast Hawk message, explaining their secret mission, saving them from the rest of their party's wrath. Sefer reveals she lived in Labyrinth Forest 100 years ago, but fled with Aurum after being shunned for her half-elf blood. Returning to the forest edge, the group faces another volley of elven arrows until Sefer calls out her mother's name. When the hostiles remain aggressive, Aurum steps forward and identifies herself as a half-gnome. Hearing her name, the elves in a flash drop to one knee in reverence, as gnomes are venerated nature spirits. Using magic flutes, the guards command the dense trees to part, leading the group high into the canopy bridges of the enchanting elf village. Ecto meets chairwoman Simona, who governs all 4 elven settlements, inside the village's central tree estate. Simona reveals she already captured Daniela after the tiger beastkin wandered into the woods alone and collapsed from disorientation magic. After releasing Daniela, Simona listens quietly as Ecto lays out Ausmund's plan for monster domestication, road-building engineers, and total invasion. Simona firmly vows that the elves will fight to the last standing warrior to protect their sacred home. Later, Simona privately tells Sefer that her mother passed away 32 years ago, delivering her final message of love and weeping as she apologizes for failing to protect young Sefer long ago. Seeking to stop the war at its source, Ecto, Ortbein, and Daniela teleport back to the royal castle in Oman to confront the ministers. Right. Minister Douglas admits his plan to build monster breeding grounds, claiming other forests lack enough magic power to raise giant beasts, while revealing that Left Minister Beardark wants to subjugate the elves entirely and seize an ancient spirit treasure. As they walk down the grand hallway, 12-year-old King Laika charges out with a wooden sword, and Daniela dramatically rolls across the floor to play along, right away charming the young Lion King. While Daniela stays behind to play with the monarch, Ecto and Ortbein meet Left Minister Beardark. The scarred bear beastkin arrogantly dismisses any need for an alliance with human kingdoms, declaring he will not stop until every elf is crushed. Returning to the elf village, Ecto informs Simona that Beardark is driven by personal malice. Simona confirms that Beardark's father died leading a failed raid on Labyrinth Forest years ago, prompting her to trust Ecto with the secret of the spirit treasure. Simona leads the group to the edge of the village and dispels a hidden barrier, revealing the sacred tree ring, a towering gateway of woven branches glowing with strange energy that leads directly into the spirit realm. She explains that Aurum was found as a baby wrapped in light at the base of this ring, making her the only person capable of crossing over to ask the ancient nature spirits for help. As Aurum steps into the ring, and her body begins fading into light, Ecto refuses to let his friend vanish alone and grabs her arm. Ortbein leaps onto Ecto's back, and all 3 tumble through the blinding gateway together. They materialize in the spirit realm with weightless bodies composed of glowing light particles under a rainbow sky. Following the guidance of a tree spirit girl, they in an instant travel to a giant stone mountain where Aurum tearfully reunites with her parents, the earth spirit Gnome, and her mother Laura, a former human who merged with the spirit. Gnome uses his magic to shape a glowing stone room out of the mountain wall, inviting Ecto and his companions inside to rest and discuss how to save Labyrinth Forest. In the Spirit Realm Stone Room, Gnome warns that unleashing a spirit's full power would shatter the balance of the mortal world. Just then, 3 glowing light spheres transform into Salamander the Fire Spirit, Undine the Water Spirit, and Sylph the Wind Spirit. Excited to visit the mortal realm, they offer to suppress their strength and accompany Aurum. The Spirit Queen gives her blessing, provided they keep the world intact, and the spirits merge into their gear and bodies. Sylph fuses into Ecto's cloak, Salamander and Undine enter Ortbein's staff, and Gnome and Laura melt into Aurum's body. Stepping back through the sacred tree ring portal, Ecto, Ortbein, and Aurum within moments materialize in Labyrinth Forest right before Chairwoman Simona and Sefer. Time in the spirit realm does not pass in the mortal world, making their return feel instantaneous. With the spirits securing their defense, Ecto turns his attention to avoiding a bloody war with Ausmund Kingdom. Later that evening, Simona hosts a grand feast in the central hall with fruit, honey wine, and meat prepared especially for Ecto's party. While drunken Aurum and Sefer join the elven maidens in a mesmerizing dance, Simona pulls Ecto and Ortbein aside with her warrior captain Liatia. Inside a private room, Ecto candidly admits that without spirit intervention, the elves would eventually fall to Ausmund's military force. He proposes a peaceful trade agreement where the elves manage and operate monster ranches within the outer forest to export meat to Ausmund. This solves the kingdom's food shortage while generating foreign currency and protecting elven territory. While Simona promises to consider the plan, Liatia fumes with pride, refusing to give up even an inch of sacred forest. Outside on the rope bridges, A furious Leatia draws her blade and ambushes Ecto and Ortbein to stop the proposal. Before she can strike, Sylph takes control of the surrounding air spirits, preventing Leatia from using wind magic. Ecto traps the warrior in a rock prison magic spell, and Ortbein drops a mild bolt of lightning magic to paralyze her. Ecto coldly tells the trapped captain to cool her head, leaving her safely locked away while they return to the feast. The next morning, Simona deeply apologizes for Leatia's insubordination and agrees to support Ecto's trade proposal. Wanting solid backing before convincing the other village elders, Simona agrees to travel secretly with Ecto and Ortbein to meet Right Minister Douglas. Leaving Oram and Sefer behind, under threat of Ortbein's sleep magic, the trio teleports directly into Douglas's office at Omund Royal Castle. Ecto presents the Monster Ranch plan to a stunned Douglas inside the office. The minister worries that handing full ranch control to the elves might let them manipulate meat prices, but Simona steps forward, removes her disguise, and guarantees fair trade and lasting peace. Overjoyed by the breakthrough, Douglas signs off on the proposal, but warns that Left Minister Beardark is still bent on launching an invasion in 2 weeks. To minimize damage, Ortbein devises a plan to delay noble troop movement and funding, so Beardark's army arrives weakened. Ecto meets Bear Beastkin merchant Elmar at his shop to arrange commercial guild support. Back in the capital city, Elmar agrees to spread rumors that invading Labyrinth Forest is financial suicide due to spirit magic, securing his role as the sole trade middleman between Osmund and the elves. Next, Ecto and Ortbein teleport to the border city of Frode and meet mercenary Captain Klaus at the guild hall. They inform Klaus of the spirits and Douglas's plan to hold back royal troops, prompting Klaus to spread the word so mercenaries pull out before the battle. Returning to Labyrinth Forest, Simona desperately seeks Ecto's help after Oram and Sefer crash the Elder Council meeting. Angered when arrogant elders insult Sefer and mock her spirit journey, Oram channels Gnome's earth magic and encases the entire council inside a towering rock pillar that shoots through the roof. Ecto uses Sylph's wind magic to breeze up the hulking pillar, where the weeping elders promise total submission to Simona's peace plan. Ecto dissolves the stone and floats everyone safely down, securing unanimous elven approval to build the ranches. With the elders aligned, Ecto, Ortbein, and Simona design 4-kilometer square ranch sectors near the forest border, leaving trees untouched to preserve magical energy. To prepare for Beardark's incoming army, Ecto, Oram, and Sefer construct 2 vast stone walls, 5 meters high and 3 meters thick, near the forest entrance. Meanwhile, Ortbein and Ecto visit Douglas again at the castle, where the minister faces a headache over 12-year-old King Laika choosing Tiger Beastkin adventurer Daniela as his playmate and demanding she become his official sword instructor. Ortbein suggests Douglas hire Daniela directly as the king's personal guard, neatly bypassing noble backlash while strengthening Douglas's stance. 2 weeks later, Left Minister Beardark leads a force of 5,000 soldiers and mercenaries toward Labyrinth Forest. Standing atop the newly built outer defense wall, Ecto, Ortbein, and Oram unleash the suppressed manifestations of the spirits. Sylph creates a giant wind Valkyrie. Ortbein summons a flaming phoenix and water dragon, and Oram shapes 2 towering sand lions. The terrifying spectacle causes hundreds of panic-stricken mercenaries and soldiers to throw down their weapons and flee. Ortbein's water dragon rains down heavy storms, transforming the battlefield into a thick, muddy swamp that slows the remaining invaders. Ecto's wind Valkyrie blasts gusting gales that roll entire platoons backward. As the surviving 400 enemy troops funnel toward a single, intentionally weak 4-meter gate in the outer wall, Simona orders her archers to rain down armor-piercing arrows. When the gate finally breaks, enemy soldiers rush in, only to be trapped in the forest by Leatia and 200 elven warriors before reaching the second, gateless wall. Outside the wall, mercenary Captain Klaus spots red signal smoke and executes his secret deal with Douglas, turning his mercenaries against Beardark's rear command unit. Ecto, Ortbein, Oram, and Sefer sprint through a sand tunnel created by Oram, bursting directly in front of Beardark. Driven mad with rage, Beardark swings his colossal battle axe and smashes through Oram's rock walls. Ecto steps in with his Adamadragon sword, but the Beastkin's brute strength forces him backward. Just as Beardark presses his assault, Sylph releases a blinding gale from Ecto's cloak that sends the immense bear Beastkin flying through the air. Ortbein immediately follows up with a surge of lightning magic, paralyzing Beardark on the spot. With their commander captured alive by Klaus's mercenaries and their troops routed, the invading army crumbles into absolute defeat, securing peace for Labyrinth Forest without a single major casualty. With the battlefield quieted, Klaus and his mercenary party drag the bound Left Minister Beardark straight into the elf village. Staring down the elven leaders, Beardark shouts at them to execute him immediately, swearing that if he lives, he will return to wipe out every last elf to avenge his father. Chairwoman Simona stands her ground with ice-cold calm, reminding the bear beastkin that his father died invading their border barrier, and that continuing a cycle of hatred brings nothing. Refusing to execute him, Simona orders warrior captain Liatia to lead Beardark away to the cells. 2 days later, in the main hall of the village, Ortbein returns from his errand in Osmund Kingdom, bringing along Right Minister Douglas. Unrolling an official parchment, Douglas reads aloud a message from 12-year-old King Lyca, who formally acknowledges the kingdom's fault, seeks a lasting peace, and promises full compensation for the unauthorized invasion. Satisfied, Simona sets the captive ransom at 1 large gold coin per prisoner, completely waiving medical damages for injured elves, so long as the monster meat trade agreement moves forward as planned. With immediate war debt settled, Ortbein reveals his true objective on behalf of Prime Minister Granville, proposing a 3-way alliance between Falsford Kingdom, Usmund Kingdom, and the Labyrinth Forest Elves. He explains that an aggressive neighbor like the Mildenberg Empire will always target divided lands, making a united defensive front their best deterrent. Both Simona and Douglas eagerly agree, realizing that an attack on one will bring the full counter-offensive strength of the others. Shortly after, Ortbein teleports Prime Minister Granville directly to Osmund Kingdom to finalize the pact alongside Douglas and Simona, while Beardark is moved to the Royal Castle dungeon to spend the rest of his life under heavy watch. Meanwhile, Ecto and Ortbein visit the Mercenary Guild in Frode, where Captain Klaus and his men are already celebrating their sprawling payout. Confirming that Klaus will handle guard work for future trade routes, the pair teleport over to the capital city Omund to visit merchant leader Elmar, locking in his role as the main middleman for elven monster meat exports. Within the royal palace of Osmund, Douglas and Prime Minister Granville rush Ecto and Ortbein straight into the audience hall to see young King Lyca, who stands beside his tiger beastkin guard Daniela. Rattled by his army's shameful defeat in the forest, the young king announces his intention to undergo the Sacred Beast King trial in Zupragan, an endless dungeon located inside the northern Wilman Kingdom, to prove his strength to his people. Douglas desperately tries to talk the young monarch out of it, insisting he wait 3 years until he grows older, but Ecto and Ortbein support a limited, lower-level run to give the young king his political victory without unnecessary danger. That night, Douglas corners Ecto in his office, spending hours scolding him about proper parental concern, while Ortbein sneakily teleports away with Prime Minister Granville, leaving Ecto alone to suffer through the endless lecture. 5 days later, back in Labyrinth Forest, Oram and Sephir finish constructing the gigantic outer wall around the monster ranches. Gathering before the sacred tree ring, Ecto, Ortbein, Oram, and Sephir step through the portal to report their success to the Spirit Queen. Inside the Spirit Realm, their bodies once again dissolve into shimmering light particles. Oram hilariously stretches his luminous face upward, while Sephir marvels at controlling her floating body, prompting Ecto to silently wonder just how old the Spirit Queen really is. Before the thought can fully form, a monumental sacred tree trunk appears, and the Spirit Queen pops out as an annoyed little girl, scolding Ecto for judging immortal spirits with human concepts of age and time. Realizing logic is useless in this realm, Ecto offers his deepest gratitude, joined by Sephir on behalf of all elves, as Gnome, Laura, Sylph, Salamander, and Undine manifest around them in a blinding flash of light.